We are live. Hi everyone, I think we're just going to wait a few more seconds for a few more people to attend, and then we'll make a start. Right, let's make a start. Hello, a warm welcome to everybody. Thank you for joining us on this webinar, which is all about open banking, a game changer for the financial ecosystem. So we've been really happy to have worked with WhiteSight in putting together our first report on open banking and the emerging opportunities in MENA. We're also very humbled to be joined by the founder and CEO of WhiteSight today. So let's move on and introduce our speakers for the event. So hi, so my name's Jennifer and I am the head of strategic initiatives for Spire, spending the last 12 years working in PwC UK. Today I am joined by Richard, and Richard works for the OBIE. And he is a policy development consultant responsible for looking at the open banking policy agenda. So very warm welcome to you, Richard. We're also joined by Tanja, and Tanja heads up the Group Open API initiative in Raiffeisen Bank. Very happy to have you joining us today from Austria, Tanja. And then also we have, as I mentioned earlier, Sanjeev, founder of WhiteSight, with lots of experience working with financial institutions on their digital transformation. We're also joined by our very own Amir, who is the Chief Product Officer at Aon Digital, with more than 20 years experience in building and delivering digital products. And last but not least, we've got Imelda, who's working seamlessly in the background to make sure everything's running as smoothly as possible. So today's webinar is all about open banking, what it means, how did it come together, what is the banking, open banking future. So first of all, let's talk about the drivers of open banking. So how did it actually come about? Now, in our paper, in our research paper, we looked at almost 4 factors. So we have the regulatory push, we have the competitive push, we have the retail customers pool, and we also have the business customers pools. So, and we will see later on that actually lots of countries are doing it differently. So if we move on quickly to our first question, which I'm going to give to Richard. What actually led to the emergence of open banking, Richard?
Well, I guess open banking, the origins of it actually in the UK was an initiative called Moderator, which people probably don't remember too well, launched in 2011. This was the first time that there was an intention to develop something that enabled consumers to have greater access to their transactional data in a portable electronic format. It was a voluntary initiative, which the banks signed up to doing, and it did enable people to download current account transactional data in a standardized format, but it had a number of deficiencies to it. The user experience was very poor. People had to upload files, and it was complex and cumbersome, and it only provided a one-off sort of snapshot of data rather than an ongoing feed. And actually some of that data itself could be manipulated, so it wasn't going to be reliable for credit scoring and other important use cases of that nature. At the same time, there are a number of other regulatory initiatives ongoing. The CMA was looking at the competition of the retail banking market. They found broadly that the UK market was very concentrated, that 6 banks dominated and had over 90% of the customers. They found that customers did not regularly switch accounts, so people stayed with the same bank for a very long time, and as a consequence of that, they found some failings in the retail banking market that they thought could be addressed by providing an open banking solution, a foundation solution that will enable people to get better information about the costs and the transactions that they were doing, and therefore they could start to make better choices and encourage switching and encourage the adoption of other products. In parallel with that, I guess in Europe we had the Second Payment Services Directive that had an ambition to open up payments and provide more competition to cards. And I guess overarching that, there had been the development of GDPR, which aimed to provide people with the ability, it gave them legal right to their data, to be able to take it, a right to data portability. And open banking really was the mechanism in which that could safely be done. So there were a number of regulatory priorities that were evident in that market, but the CMA in particular wanted open banking to have a regulatory underpinning. They thought that otherwise it would be quite slow to be evolved. That was the experience of My Data, and that actually the benefits wouldn't be achieved necessarily as quickly as they otherwise might, unless there was an entity, open banking implementation entity, that was tasked with actually driving that initiative forward and ensuring consistency and a good performance of the APIs on which the TPPs could start to build services that would be attractive to customers and reliable to customers. So open banking, I guess, is the first sort of serious attempt to use technology to address the problem of data sharing and how that can be utilized to enable people to better pick and choose the products that suit their particular needs and put them in charge of their financial lives. So giving them control over that data, the regulator helps that will enable them to access more suitable products, get better rates, save easier, and so forth. So a lot of benefits to consumers flow from the ability of being able to utilize their data, relying on TPPs who have developed good services for them to do that, and to address really some of the issues that are inherent in financial markets, certainly within the UK, to address that. So those were the origins of very regulatory-driven initiative within the UK that has as its objective that increase of competition, access of new participants, and the changing of markets, the opening up of markets that enable new companies to come in and compete with the incumbent banks.
Thank you, Richard. So what I'm hearing there really is that the banks had a lot of data, and basically it's around making that data available to everyone to use, but at the same time, you know, someone needs to regulate that opening of data.
Yes, I think one of the big changes in over the course of my career, actually, when I first started working in banking, we all talked about our data as customer data as our data, the bank's data. And I, used to very regularly attend a lot of webinars and seminars and what have you about how we could commoditize that data. The change here is that there's been a general acceptance, I think, across Europe that it isn't the bank's data, it is the customer's data, and they should be able to access that in ways that provide them with benefit rather than the financial institution who holds that data. So that's, to me, has been one of the massive changes in mindset in the industry over the course of a couple of decades.
Brilliant. Yeah, so 360 turn that. Thank you, Richard. So if we move on to the next slide, please. Now, obviously, when something new happens, there are going to be vast opportunities. So, Amir, what are the main opportunities for both banks and customers?
Thanks, Jennifer. And I think just kind of connecting back to what Richard said, there is an amazing, it's just an amazing opportunity and, possibilities out there which we can really, benefit from this, initiative, if you want to call it. So the idea is, and I really I was smiling actually when Richard was talking about, the banks were thinking it's their data, and now there's a total switch. It's customers' data, and with their permission, we can just kind of derive value to them. So I think the idea is from banks' perspective or financial institution perspective, we need to see this as a total shift on how we interact and how we deliver our service to the customers. I think that's how, which is necessary for banks to think through. If they think through that lens, if they think through that mindset, I think it would totally change the way they even interact internally. So, there's a view of inside out and outside in. So if you think about internal view about the operations of technology, it all can really transform on how we enable those agile, scalable infrastructure to, answer this question on how we can deliver value to the customer. So from bank's perspective, I think the opportunity is unlimited. With this open banking initiative across the globe, and now I think in GCC it's happening quite rapidly as well. It's kind of a really lowering the barriers to entry, for new kind of entrants, and also challenging the traditional banking models as well. So even, to some extent in certain markets, it's coming to a question where do we manufacture or we distribute financial products? So shall we do both, or shall we just kind of create this ecosystem which delivers that? So I think it kind of really shaping up the core questions on how we deliver value to the customers. From bank's perspective, they'll still be doing the same thing, managing risk, fraud, etc. But how they do it, I think that's what is more important. It can really give them some strength. I think it's an opportunity, not a threat at all. I think it gives them a lot more strength on how to manage, customer expectation and deliver value to the customer. I think that's from the bank side. From customer side, I think it's all about understanding their financial life better. It's all about getting, help and support, but at the right time, and very personalized help and support. And it's all about convenience. So again, I think customers are very much used to it now, and almost across the globe. And it's not only one region. From multiple platforms, they're very much aligned to technology. They're very much aligned to convenience. They're very much aligned to a couple of clicks and things are done. And again, very much aligned to very specific and personalized kind of help and offering available to them at their fingertips. So I think from their perspective, whether it's about lending, whether it's about moving forward in their life, whether it's about planning their financial life, they all have this opportunity with open banking to do it much better, to do it much more personalized, and to enable much more much more healthier financial life actually in the long run.
Brilliant. Thank you, Amir. So a lot of opportunities for the banks as long as they change their mindset and think about it from the point of view of the customer in terms of convenience, innovation. Brilliant, thank you.
Right.
So we've spoken about open banking, what it is. As part of our research paper then, we looked at the global players and we thought about what are the main open banking approaches that we see. And these approaches are dependent on market dynamics, on regulatory readiness, on innovation, for example. So we can see from the map quite clearly that Europe and the UK are pretty much regulator driven. And I think Richard alluded to that earlier. And then we have Canada and the US who are mainly market driven. And then we have some countries who are taking a collaborative approach. So if we move on to the next question then, and we go to Tanja. So where we've got between regulatory led and industry led initiatives, obviously there are going to be benefits and risks. And what are these benefits and risks associated with each?
Thank you, Jennifer. I think that this question is really important especially for the countries or organizations who are starting this from the very early stage. I mean, if you look at the regulatory-led initiatives, here, and this was the fact, or this was applied for us. We are based in Austria and European Union. As Raiffeisen Bank International, we started open banking as PSD2 regulation. Here, I think that especially for traditional banks, we have many benefits. First of all, open banking was a new thing for us, right? So we did not even know how to start with this. And when you have a regulation, then this immediately position the initiative within the organization on the very top, meaning that you are prioritized, you have budget, you have time to implement this, and you kind of have guidance because regulator did define certain aspect of the implementation. And for traditional banks and also for even small participants, this is a huge benefit, right? So I often say that open banking is much more than just, providing open APIs and satisfying regulation. It's really about transformation. This is something that Amir also mentioned at the very beginning. So when you have a market where open banking is regulatory led, then this gives the same opportunity to every participant in the market to kind of take time, learn what it means to open up, what it means to do open banking, to prepare the organization for that, because this is not an easy task, right? This is a huge transformation of legacy systems, of the way how we are treating our products, of the way how we are defining, so-called cost-benefit analysis, or how we are approaching opportunities. However, there are certain risks also related to this, and we also see this already now in the market. There are some organizations who simply treat this as regulation and they stop there. So they do not kind of seize the opportunity and move their organization forward, because we do know that if anything will happen in the future, then integration in customer journeys will happen. So in order to be integrated, in order to be present, you have to open up. So here I think that one of the biggest risks is really that the organization will kind of not to take the step forward. They will just simply implement the scope that was defined by the regulator, and that's it. Also, there is some other risks. There are some other risks associated to this, and this we see in Europe. Even though we talk about regulatory-led initiative, we see different speed of development in different markets. We also see quite different approach from local national regulators, which is kind of blocking us to progress forward equally in every market within EU. Then addressing maybe this industry-led initiatives, here I think the biggest opportunity is the fact that there is already business recognized in the market. There is already clear use case that is giving opportunity, that is giving benefits to the customers, and the biggest players in the market will probably seize this opportunity and kind of move the market forward. However, we have to remember, and we have to repeat this constantly, that in open banking, we talk about accessing customers' data. So regulation is needed at certain point of time. This is quite a sensitive topic. Customers are also maybe even not aware at certain point of time how they are giving consent, to whom they are giving consent to access their data, and they are kind of simply getting confused how to manage this in the future. So I think that one of the really most important risks associated to this industry-led initiative is the fact that access to customers' data will not be regulated. So I really like also the slide that you presented. And here I would say that from my own experience, I think that the best approach is actually this collaborative approach, right? The approach where you have market mature enough to move forward, organizations who are opening up, but at the same time, you do have regulator protecting the customer and access to the customer's data.
Thank you, Tanja. That's quite a fulsome answer there. And obviously it shows that not one size fits all.
Exactly.
You know, there's risks and benefits, and actually it's pretty much up to the country to decide which approach is right for their market. Thank you, Tanja. Amir, I'm going to come back to you now because I would like to know your views on the open banking readiness in MENA from both a regulatory and infrastructure standpoint. If I just introduce that a little bit, because obviously in MENA, we had Bahrain, who was the first mover in the open banking framework because they introduced that in 2018. But then very quickly that was followed by the UAE and Saudi Arabia. And then we've got other countries that are slowly acknowledging that open banking is coming in. So if I repeat that question again, Amir, so what are your views on open banking readiness in MENA, both from a regulatory and an infrastructure standpoint, please?
Thanks, Jennifer. I think you've set the scene really right. So I think when we just kind of are working on this report, I think it's quite amazing to see this drive across the region. And I think Sanjeev did mention this point, perhaps, before as well. So it's about, when we started looking into the MENA region and specifically coming close to GCC, I think we have seen that that drive in the kind of a GCC region to open up. I think that's the kind of a whole drive behind it. And if you think about it, that three key players actually in this game. So regulators, incumbent kind of a banks, or if you want to call it industry, and then the new entrants. So there would be quite a few kind of new entrants coming into the play, because I think that's the whole. This open banking is like a magnet to to innovation and bring new kind of scenarios and use cases to life. Actually, I think that's the kind of magnet to that. So, if you just imagine UK again from the same perspective, I think we are now turning into hundreds of TPPs actually just offering those services to the consumers. So, if you look at these three players, I think from regulatory perspective, as you just kind of put that slide up actually. So, Bahrain is kind of obviously leading the role in there. And then, followed by UAE and now Saudi as well. So I think it's kind of a really, in a way, trailblazing this kind of initiative in the MENA region. From infrastructure perspective, and again, sticking to the regulators at the moment. So from infrastructure perspective, there's a lot going on. If you think about, let's say, a sandbox environment, if you think about, how all these, at least these countries, enabling innovation in the country actually. So you think about Bahrain again. Recently, you might have seen the FinHub 973, the digital lab, where you can basically get in there, look into regulatory testing, startup acceleration, partner innovation. So lots of kind of cool stuff, I would say, is happening over there. So again, if you think about Saudi perspective, again, central bank is quite heavily pushing this sandbox kind of out as well. There's a lot of payments kind of related fintechs into the sandbox at the moment. I think there are roughly 20 to 25 kind of active, participant in the sandbox. So again, a lot of push and strong kind of enablement is happening at the moment from regulatory perspective. And same with UAE. So if you think about UAE, they are kind of really pushing the same. Look at their sandbox environment, and again, UAE also is kind of is a house to around, I think, more than 45% of the total fintech ecosystem actually within the region. So again, a big time kind of activities are happening over there. Then if you think from incumbent perspective, and I'm just going to refer to the report we've been working on with WhiteSight. So there are a lot more kind of a desire to take a charge and lead actually. So you think about Emirates NBD, they're kind of they launched API kind of a sandbox a couple of years back. Same with ADIB actually. I've just mentioned about recently about the regulator as well. So I think if you combine these two components together, so regulator and the industry, I think it's a very strong push on open banking right now. But I think almost everyone, including all the panelists over here, I think we talked about it's not a short journey. It's not an easy journey. I think it would take a long time to get starting with the innovation, understanding what that innovation means really in that sandbox environment first. And then I think the challenge would come in, how do you really scale it actually? So once you prove that hypothesis in the sandbox environment, then the challenge would come in, how do you really scale that innovation across multiple kind of perhaps ecosystems, in other words. So I think there's quite a strong desire, there's a kind of a strong policy making behind that desire as well. And there's a very strong kind of acceptance from the banking leadership, and also the regulator kind of a collaboration with the banking leadership to bring that initiative in the region. Just on the last point about the third party or third party kind of providers and coming into and play into this kind of a space big time, I think it's really at the early stage. I think once we get more mature, again, Bahrain is quite mature actually from the regulation perspective. Once we get mature, we would see a lot more TPPs coming in and start helping those small kind of problems for the customers, and then scaling it in kind of other markets, whether like Saudi or UAE kind of markets. So I think that's where we are. A really good kind of push from all the key industry players, and I think we're heading in the right direction.
Thank you, Amir. Yeah, early days, but getting there slowly and surely. Thank you. So if we move on to the next slide, please. So I think we touched on earlier that, we are sort of at the start of our journey. We're probably a few years behind some of the more mature markets. And actually one of the benefits of that is being able to look towards these countries and thinking about, what are the open banking lessons that we can learn from these key regions. So for example, making sure that there is a reasonable time frame to put open banking in place. You don't put it in and it happens overnight. You have to implement it, make sure there's the right infrastructure, and then try and scale it up, get the users on board and using open banking. We've seen some regions such as Richard said, in the UK, we've got the OBIE, the independent implementation entity, who's there to set the regulations. And again, to put a timeline on it happening, to refine it and then improve it. So lots and lots of open banking lessons that we can learn from the key regions. So actually on that topic then, if we move on to our next question that goes to Sanjeev. So obviously, can you give us an example of a success story for open banking rollout in a developed market, please? Sanjeev, thank you.
Yeah. So Tanja set the context very well when she mentioned that banks need to look beyond the regulatory requirements and the potential opportunities of open banking to really go after the success. And I would love to share the open banking process that was followed by Starling Bank in the UK. And most of us know Starling as the poster child of the digital or the challenger bank in the UK. However, in addition to being a very successful challenger bank, they have also led the open banking initiative quite well. And what I mean by that is they were one of the first banks to actually start the open banking journey, even before the open banking directives came into place in 2018. So right after they launched in 2018 February, the next month they launched the developer portal, which was their first initiative towards setting up an open banking platform. And another thing that they did really well was the point that Amir mentioned about the scale challenge, that you can start well, it's fine, but how do you scale it to multiple ecosystems and continue the engagement, both with partners as well as the consumers who are going to take those products. So what Starling did over the last 3.5 years, they have managed to develop a marketplace which is very thriving and growing, and it has grown to over 30+ partners spread across retail and SME marketplaces. And to just give you some examples of their partnerships, so they have Wealthify, Nutmeg for investments, and the way they have done the pricing is also pretty important, right? So if a customer comes to your partner platform and the cost is different from what he or she gets by directly signing up with the partner, then there would be a difference in experience. And that is what Starling has tried to match. They've also partnered with another budgeting app, which is Emma, which kind of gives a holistic experience to a customer. And because Starling has a wide variation in the customer base, they also focus on micro entrepreneurs. They also have SMEs as their customer. So if let's say you are a Starling customer with a personal and a business account and a separate savings account in another bank, plus investments in, let's say, Wealthify or Nutmeg, you could choose to collect all this data in their Emma, which is their account aggregation partner, and use it to create a budget. So these kind of holistic experiences that Starling has managed to give it to their customers has been reasonably successful in them becoming a very successful digital bank, not just in the UK, but across the world. They are getting a lot of advantages in terms of they have grown and they have shown the potential to grow with the partners and grow with the consumers. So that's a perfect example from a developed market for you, Jennifer.
Excellent, thank you. And that's a really great example about having the foresight to look beyond what's happening right now and think about the future and how you can scale up. So thank you for that, Sanjeev. And now can you give us an example of a success story for open banking in a emerging market?
Yes, so while we are looking for the emerging market initiatives, we were very happy to see a lot of initiative coming out of Latin America, which is not a market where regulators have led the agenda of open banking. There's a lot of fintech innovation that has happened in the market. And when I say fintech innovation, you need to keep in mind that in Latin America, a lot of non-banks like e-commerce players, utility companies, they have also led the fintech innovation agenda. And one of the initiatives that I came across was from Bank Topazio, which is a reasonably old player in the market. They have been active in the market from 2005. And they became a full-fledged bank in Brazil in 2009. However, the real transformation of this bank began in 2017 when they started the journey of APIification of their assets. And they really opened up their banking assets to the fintech partners and the non-bank partners in Brazil by creating an offering called Banking as a Service. And this Banking as a Service offering had led to the co-creation model in Brazil, where Bank Topazio now partners with more than 50 fintechs and quite a few big players from the e-commerce industry. For example, they have partnered with Mercado Libre, which is one of the biggest marketplace in Brazil. And they have offered credit products to consumers who shop on these marketplaces in real time. So that kind of use cases in an emerging market is super important, not just from the perspective of innovation, but also from the perspective of financial inclusion, which is one of the key agenda of any emerging market. So I would say this kind of initiative that we are seeing, not just in Latin America, but a couple of countries in Africa also are going through the same route of innovation by leveraging open APIs, has been really heartening to see.
Thank you, Sanjeev. Yeah, it's really good to see that it's not just the new banks, the challenger banks that are taking this on board, but actually as an incumbent bank, you know, the opportunities are huge for you as well. That's great. Thank you so much, Sanjeev. So we move on to the next topic then. Thank you. So, so we go back to the MENA region and we look at the three main players in open banking, Bahrain, Saudi, and also the UAE. As part of our research paper with WhiteSight, we looked at actually how, you know, what is the traction, and we assessed them for market readiness and also regulatory readiness. So we can see from the slides there that UAE are ahead in market readiness. And I think Amir mentioned earlier that actually this is because there's so many fintechs in the sandbox in the UAE. So that's why they're slightly ahead of the curve. And then when we look at regulatory readiness, we can see that Bahrain there is slightly ahead of the curve. Again, they, you know, we say they were the first one to come up with the open banking framework. But also one thing that sets them aside is that they have the data protection rules in place. So Amir, if I come back to you again, when we talk about these three countries being the main drivers for open banking in the region, but actually how ready are the banks and customers for open banking?
Thanks, Jennifer. Just a very quick kind of a comment, actually. I think just for everybody's kind of information, I think we have done a lot of insight digging actually on open banking readiness, and please do have a look. I think there's some outputs on in the report as well on, you know, which countries are sitting where actually on this open banking readiness, you know, kind of an index, if you want to call it. So we looked at things like market readiness, you know, the financial inclusion, the phone penetration, the digital payments platform, etc. And from regulatory perspective, the legislation itself, you know, the payments, data protection, etc. So, and again, it's a really, really good kind of I think, you know, kind of a really model to look into for more understanding. When it comes to the kind of a region and comes to the how banks and customers are ready, I think it's again, I think, I'm going back to the early comment which I make actually. So it's about the shift in the mindset. Typically, I think it's quite difficult at this stage. If you think about the back end kind of processes, the back end kind of journeys, etc. I think they're quite difficult at this stage to open up because of multiple reasons. If you think about incumbents, you know, old legacy infrastructure, etc. I think there's quite a bit of a challenge in that space to overcome that, you know, legacy infrastructure, to make sure, first of all, we capture the right data, we capture the quality data, we capture the you know, multiple dimensional data, I would say. And then once we capture it digitally, then we can enable to share that data, obviously using the right kind of security protocols and customer consent, but then we should be able to share that data. So I think it's a kind of a long journey. The countries where there is a regulation already in place, for example, in Bahrain, a lot of banks, they are basically opening up, you know, very compliant. I think they're basically compliant to PSD2 kind of standards, you know, when opening up the APIs, etc. But it's just, again, it's the very early days, I would suggest. So I think from Bahrain perspective, still a lot of banks are kind of really making that move. But what needs to really happen, if we truly see this as a transformational kind of initiative, it's a mindset shift. So it's basically, you know, I think in my head, if I go back, you know, I don't know, 5-10 years, you know, the way we were thinking about digital transformation, I think this is that next wave. You need to really think about open banking transformation. So it's not about just purely doing what regulation says, but it's all about doing what is right for the business and how you get yourself ready for the next challenge. So I think banks are in early stages. At this stage, I think it's mostly regulatory compliance driven kind of a, you know, kind of a thought process. But I'm really hoping that, you know, as we go through the learning process in the region, it would quite quickly start shifting towards how I can take a competitive advantage of this opportunity. How can I really serve my customers better, and how can I really enhance my technical capability, business capability, and the ecosystem. Starting point is internal kind of an ecosystem, and then how I can really enable and interact with the external ecosystem. I think the whole idea over here is moving away from transaction and moving into experience economy or engagement economy, if you want to call it. So I think that's where the banks are at the moment. And I think from customer perspective, I did mention earlier as well in the past, in the last kind of a couple of questions, I think with a buzzing population, I think more than 65% very young population in the region, they're all really, really ready for it. Yeah. So they're very kind of digital native. They exactly know how it kind of experience works. So as long as we start delivering that value and they start engaging, customers, they start engaging, I'm sure they will just start coming into this kind of open banking net very quickly. Just one last thing on this. I think there has to be a lot of education or awareness needed on this topic, because I still remember when open banking started in the UK, I kind of used to work for Lloyd's Banking Group, and I think there was a lot of conversation at that time on what's the benefit or what's the end goal, and how customers get benefit out of it. And I think there has to be a lot of awareness and engagement with the end consumer to understand it's not purely about data actually, but it's purely about delivering the value as an outcome to the customer and how well aware they are about that value. I think that's very critical actually in this game.
Thank you, Amir. Yeah. So the banks are getting ready. The customers, we need to make sure that they are ready and also know what open banking is all about and how they can use it. Thank you. So we've spoken now about open banking, what it is, and we've spoken about open banking and what it looks like globally. Now let's have a look at this term called an open economy. What does it mean? So we've had in the past what we would call the closed banking. The banks have, as Richard said, it's our data. And then now we're moving on to open banking, where it's the customer's data and, data sharing happens. Then we move on to the next stage, which we call that open finance. So this is where financial data is then shared between financial sectors. And lastly, we move on to this open economy. So actually, I'm going to ask more questions on this to find out a little bit more. So Richard, open banking then, is that the first milestone to achieving open finance?
Yes, Jennifer, I think it is. The John Glenn, the Treasury Minister in the UK, who recently said, as sure as night follows day, open finance follows open banking. So clearly, that's the government view. Yeah. I think as Tanja has identified, the scope of PSD2 was limited to payment accounts. It was the regulatory scope, so that was the focus of open banking, to enable data for current account effectively. Similarly, the CMA objective was in that area too. But it's very clear that there are two benefits. I think, as Amir has just said, that this is all about where you create value, and you create value in two ways by moving into open finance. One is very obviously for customers themselves. Customers, will get significant benefits from being able to see all of their financial holdings and products simultaneously, and being able to aggregate the data between all of those products is a real utility to them. In the open banking implementation entity is just coming to a conclusion on a concept we call sweeping, which might be actually being able to transfer money between your savings accounts and current accounts to earn interest on it if you're holding balances in your current account. So there's real utility in that. But moreover, actually, for the TPPs themselves, the ability to expand and gain data across other sectors and in the financial services sector, brings a richness of the proposition. So they're actually able to build, utilizing that additional data, all sorts of new and exciting propositions that will be of real utility to people. So it's a double whammy that actually this provides benefit to customers, but it also provides an improved proposition to TPPs, which attracts people to use their services. I think there's this is going to be a progressive thing already in the UK. The APIs that have been developed are very easily accessible by cash savings accounts, for example, and mortgages. There are more complicated products like pensions and investments that probably will take more time to evolve, but we're definitely, I think, on that journey of extending the APIs across a range of other financial products.
Brilliant, thank you, Richard. So lots and lots of things happening to achieve this open finance world. So Tanja, I'm going to come to you. In a reality where we do have open economy, we're not there yet, but what would this actually look like for customers, banks and regulators, please?
Yes, Jennifer, thank you. Before answering the question, first of all, I would like to ask you maybe to move to the previous slide, because you explained there really nicely the journey that will lead us from where we are now in the open banking space towards open economy. And here I would like to emphasize the complexity of this journey and what it actually takes for us, for certain markets, to move from open banking towards open economy. If you look at the experience that we had with open banking, with just small area of payments and accounts, which is regulated, we actually see that we are still struggling with achieving the perfect customer journey that will really bring benefits to our customers. Why? Because we have many different implementations of accessing to accounts and payments. We still did not achieve, I would say, the most perfect customer consent. We are now redirecting customers from one organization to another. So here we have a lot of things to do. And in addition to this, I also want to say that even this journey looks like a linear one. Actually, it is not, right? All the organizations are dealing with, at the same time, we are working on open banking, applying access to payments and access and accounts. But at the same time, we are kind of looking into other products, how we can open these other products. What is in the area of banking as a service? Can we maybe partner with someone new? So I would say that this is kind of multi-layered journey that will at a certain point of time lead us to open economy. And now maybe trying to answer to your question, what the world will look like for these main stakeholders in the open economy moment. In an ideal world, we would kind of move on from, beyond all the challenges that we have now with providing really good customer experience. So this means that for one customer, they would have, let's say, really nice, easy way how to manage consents, because in the open economy, we talk about each and every industry opening up access to customers' data. So for one customer, this can be quite complex and even scary thing to manage, right? So I hope that the journey will lead us kind of to a moment where we will have a really nice solution for customers, how to manage this consent, how to have really nice overview who is accessing their data in order to provide benefits for them. If you talk about organizations like banks in this world, here I think that banks will have to change a lot in order to be part of open economy, right? Now we are kind of quite used to deal with our customers in direct relationships. We are talking about digitalization and digital channels, but still we do have direct relationship with our customer. We did open up APIs for access to accounts and payments, but any other access to any other products, we are still kind of managing, right? And in the world of open economy, this this management will move towards the customers. So I do believe that banks will kind of achieve this, level of open organization where we really are ready to be part of any customer journey, no matter where the journey is. So basically banks and also even other industry players, and this is just my personal opinion, right? Because I said there's a long way to go until we come to the moment of open economy. But I think that kind of the who is providing the service will become blurred. The customer will be in the journey. He or she will care about the benefits that they are getting, but whether this financial product, especially if we talk about more simple commoditized products, is provided by one or another bank, this will not be the most important thing. And for regulators, well, I think that they will have quite a lot of new things to think about, right? Because in the world of open economy, access to data also needs to be regulated in order for end customer to be protected. So seeing only what is happening in this, openness of PSD2 APIs, regulators are also quite engaged in protecting both the customers, the banks, and also TPPs, those who are accessing the data. And if we multiply this with some kind of complexity of open economy, so yeah, I do see also certain transformation for regulators as well in order to really manage this. Also, I want to say that within Europe, at least, based on some kind of announcements, this is the clear way to go, right? And this is also what Ford Industry is telling us, that basically integration and just achieving seamless customer journey is what is ahead of us.
Thank you, Tanja. So very complicated, in short. Thank you. So moving on then, Sanjeev, can you please tell us, so obviously when we think about open banking, and it's been mentioned a few times as well, innovation obviously comes with open banking. So what are some of the most notable innovations that you've seen coming out of open banking?
Yeah, thanks, Jennifer. So in terms of open banking innovations, we hear a lot of stories about non-banks launching financial products, like Amazon and Google coming and eating the lunch of the banks, Walmart doing a lot of things in the developed markets. If you look at Asia, we have Alipay and Tencent, Grabs and Gojeks of the world doing a lot of things, which most of us are aware of. But I'm not going to talk about their innovations because it's not really applicable for banks who are working in a very regulated industry, who have a lot of trust related requirements that they have to manage with customers. So what I'm going to talk about is a bank embedding lifestyle products rather than a non-bank embedding financial products, and how they have gone about it. Mm-hmm. So there's a bank in Spain called Caixa Bank. They launched Imagine, which was their digital-only bank, almost 5 years back in 2016. And what they have done last year, they have transformed that digital-only bank to a lifestyle platform. And what it means is they are changing the way banks engage with the customers, right? And you have to see how all this fits in the open economy use case that Tanja was mentioning about. And it's really complex, the kind of stuff that you need to do to bring lifestyle products to consumers, set up an engagement model that will be relevant to the customer segment that you're going after, is just mind-boggling. So what Imagine Bank has done, they have changed the way the relationship works with customers. So most banks, if you have to open an account, you have to submit a lot of documents and it takes X number of days and then the account gets opened. And that's a friction in the whole customer onboarding journey. Doesn't matter whether it's a digital onboarding journey or it's a physical onboarding journey. So that is one friction that Imagine Bank takes away, and their relationship doesn't start with actually requiring customers to submit any documents. So their relationship starts with just the customer coming in and registering on the platform with a simple email address, and they get the password and they can start the relationship there on. And what they have done, they have created different lifestyle products for these customers. So they have created, the digital content and entertainment section for certain customers who just want to come and enjoy the content section of the bank. They have created a prepaid credit card product for certain customers who have a need for that kind of a product. And if you still want to have a full-fledged bank account, you can proceed and do the account opening process. So the way they have gone away with the relationship starting process with the customer, they have made it much simpler. They have made it much more engaging, the whole process of customer onboarding, rather than starting with a full-fledged onboarding requirements. The second thing that they have done very well is actually coming up with very targeted offering for customers who are below 18 years of age. So what they have done, they have launched 3 separate mobile apps targeting different customer segments. They have Imagine Kids, which targets customer segment below 11 years of age. They have Imagine Teens, which targets customer segment who are in 12 to 17 years of age. And then they have Imagine, which targets people who are adults. And the way they have done the personalization across these apps is extremely personalized and contextual for the customer segment that they are targeting. And they have actually partnered with several music companies, several video game companies, and technology gadget companies to ensure that they embed lifestyle products in the banking experience. So, that was one example that came to my mind to kind of give an aspirational agenda for banks to look at, that there is a bank who actually is embedding lifestyle products in banking rather than just scribbling about non-banks coming and taking their lunch away.
Thank you, Sanjeev. Yeah, that sounds amazing and something I would love to open for my daughters when they're old enough. Thank you. So we're going to move on very quickly. We're coming to the end of the webinar. So we've talked about open banking now and the long journey, but what's next? So Richard, can you tell me what's next in 2022? In a nutshell for Europe or the UK?
Yeah, just very quickly, Jennifer, I think we'll see continued adoption. There are about 3.5 million people in the UK actually using open banking enabled products. We've talked about that continued adoption of open banking as the government develops its vision for open data in other sectors. And I think the other important thing is that partially as a consequence and a response to the COVID-19 pandemic, there seems to be a really strong appetite from the part of consumers and more particularly SMEs for actionable financial guidance to help them manage their money better, given the challenges that they face. So I think those 3 things in combination are likely to see a massive acceleration in adoption of open banking.
Thank you, Richard. And the same question to you, Tanja. What's next in 2022?
Yes, thank you. I would just add shortly to what Richard said. I do see, and this is what we're already working on, improvement of customer experience when it comes to customer consent and giving the access to customer data. This is something that, let's say, not only regulators, but big groups like Berlin Standard Groups are working on. So now we are talking about moving beyond pure redirection toward app-to-app consent. So yeah, improvement and further development for sure.
Thank you, Tanja. And then lastly, Amir, what do we see next in 2022 for MENA?
So yeah, thanks, Jennifer. Really interesting conversation. I think if I just recap, the MENA region, I think market is really ripe for the disruption, right, by open banking. We have relatively young population, which is almost already has adopted or very willing to adopt, technology, payment, all these kind of, cool stuff. I think they're already there. The fintech ecosystem is I think, buzzing at the moment, especially a lot of strong backing from government and central banks. So I think it's kind of a really, coming out pretty strongly. Only thing is we need to see it differently for different countries. For example, Bahrain might be on a different kind of a trajectory or journey than Saudi and UAE, etc. So I think Different countries, one size doesn't fit all, so different countries are at the different level of maturity and journey into this kind of open banking space. So I think we need to keep an eye on that. I think the final kind of a comment in this is, in the Middle East region, I think we have to definitely evolve from purely managing money or transactions to looking into data or managing data and creating experiences. I think that's something we need to really start looking into. And finally, kind of at the heart of this change would be this interoperable APIs. Actually, I think they would enable this change. So I think that's something we should be keeping in the heart of or the center of this open banking journey.
Thank you, Mia. We've had such great conversations, really great input from all you speakers. So thank you very much. We've had such great conversations that we're now over time. But before I let you all go, we do have some questions. Again, some really good engagement from the audience as well. So thank you. And also, we've touched on points from our research report. After this webinar, we will be posting links to that report so you can look through it carefully. Again, have a look. There's some really great insights, and a lot of work was done with Spire and also WhiteSight. So thank you. I'm going to move on very quickly for maybe a couple of questions. So Amir, I'm going to come to you first. How long do you expect open banking to be fully up and running with integrations in the GCC?
So it's just how long the piece of string is, to be honest. I think, again, I think it's a long journey. We just at the start of the journey. Even if I think about US, the very first kind of, Dodd-Frank kind of act came into being in 2010. If you think about PSD2, I think it started in 2015. So again, if you learn from these other kind of markets, I think it's a long journey ahead. And as I said, each country within GCC would have slightly different kind of journey along the way. I think the first few years would be more like getting the ecosystem ready and getting the fundamentals ready. I think at least in the next 2 to 3 years. I think 2022 and beyond, I think we would start seeing some true kind of innovation and value coming out. And I'm not talking about just the sandbox environment. I'm talking about the innovation at scale, if you want to call it. So I think, and really transforming customer lives. So I think towards mid/end 2022, I think that's where we can see some value coming out to the customers. But again, it's a long journey. I think it would take a bit longer than that.
So keep watching this space, eh?
Yeah, I would say keep watching this space and then keep contributing, to be fair. I think we all, as on this call today, I think we all kind of have some kind of part to play in there. So I think keep contributing.
Yeah, brilliant. Thank you. Richard, I'm going to ask you the next question. How safe is open banking? And is it compliant with data protection?
Yeah, it's designed to be very safe. I mean, the framework in the UK is a regulatory model where TPPs are approved by the FCA, the competent authority. There's the basis of the infrastructure is built on very reliable security standards. There's this whole the directory model where there's assurances around the participants who are participating and sharing data. So a lot of thought has been given to that security model. And if you think about it from where we've come in the UK, screen scraping was the prevalent model in this area before, which was inherently unsafe, people sharing passwords and what have you. So I think that open banking provides a very good and clear pathway to a much safer way of doing it. That, as Tanja said, there is a requirement here for a regulatory oversight to ensure that the participants are, credibly and reliably acting with the to a satisfactory level. So I think these things have thought about. That's the regulatory consideration in the development of open banking, and so far has proved considerably safer actually than other other payment forms and mechanisms in the ecosystem.
So very safe. Now, this question's been asked twice, so I have to ask it. Tanja, can you take this question, please? What is the single most challenging aspect of open banking implementation around the world?
Yeah, there is no single most challenging aspect. I would say there are three at least. First one is technical. You have to prepare your organization to be able to, deal with real-time data integration. So this is a huge challenge for a majority of traditional organizations. Then the second one is mindset change. You have to prepare your organization to think about products in a different ways, right? So now we don't treat our products as just simply a loan. We actually treat APIs as a product with which we can target new markets and new customers. And the third aspect, I would say, is achieving superior customer experience. With opening up, there is a big challenge to really offer the service to the customer where the experience of giving the consent, sharing the data, and then receiving the end benefit is quite challenging. So three.
Yeah, no single biggest challenge. Now, we've got lots more questions. Unfortunately, we don't have time to go through all of them, but please keep watching this space, have a look at our LinkedIn profile, read the research paper. Hopefully that would answer more questions. Once again, I really want to thank our speakers. Thank you for your insight. It's been a pleasure. I want to thank Imelda for making the technology work seamlessly. Thank you. Thank you for the audience. You've been great. Lots of great questions coming in. And that's us from now. Thank you, and I hope to see you all again soon. Bye.
Thank you very much. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.
Thanks. Bye now.